Hi, I'm Mike and you're watching TLS. Today, Sunday the 10th of January, marks 5 years since David Bowie's untimely death. To commemorate him in our own special way, we sat down with Scott Reynolds, guitarist of CLT DRP, to talk about David Bowie's influence on him personally, the LGBTQ+ community, and the world in general. There may be some language in this video that some people might find offensive, so if you are easily offended, this might be one to miss. But if not, enjoy.
So yeah, my name is Scott Reynolds. I play guitar in a local Brighton band called CLT DRP. We do kind of electro, punk, feminist music.
When and how were you first aware of David Bowie?
I was first aware of David Bowie from a very young age. My mum was a big Bowie fan, and I remember she used to I think it was Hunky Dory was the album that she had that she really liked, and Ziggy Stardust. But I think Bowie's one of those types of artists. When you grow up, he's always been there, and you kind of forget that he's actually a person, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. He's so big; it's had such an impact. Already at the point when I was younger, that's how long he had been about, or it has been about. Like, he'd still had such a career behind him then. So even when I was sort of growing up in the 90s, and then finding out about him, it was just like he's just kind of this big name. So yeah, it was from a kid, as a kid, you know. So from a very, very young age.
What was appealing about him?
So I think he's always, just how he straddles genre. And I kind of think in his own way, he's kind of, you can't really pinpoint him, I think, too well. I think that's a major thing that's appealing. I think what separates his music is you could consider it, without sounding too pompous about it, what he does is like considered art. Like, I think there's so much vision with it. It's not just, if I compare it to like how I write, I'm very kind of primitive and just like, here's a sound, that sounds good, go for it, and that's about as far as my vision goes. Whereas with him, there's so many layers, there's so much vision, there's storytelling, there's a lot of narrative, and there's there's so much depth to it. So I think that's the biggest appeal, is the depth.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I totally agree. It had a lot of purpose, it had a lot of direction, and I think that was a testament to his.
You just look at like how many the varied artists that he's had, like collaborated with, the varied genres that he's had, the way he sort of meandered with his sound and with his aesthetic.
Absolutely. How has Bowie influenced you personally?
I don't think he's actually influenced me directly as such. Like I say, like going back, as an artist, he's so different from the sort of music that I actually create, in the sense that like he's like a storyteller in some ways, and he's kind of got so much vision that I think I love listening to him, and I literally almost just I can only sit back and admire like the way I could only wish to write something as amazing as what he does. It's so far removed, but I think if the best way to put it would just be with trying to tap into that imagination of song and seeing beyond song ideas of just being a riff or a verse, getting away from the A-B thing of just like, here's a verse and a chorus, and creating worlds and creating. Yes. And I think that's how it translates to me, and that's the thing I buzz off. I wouldn't say I listen to sort of David Bowie directly and maybe hear like a sound as such that I kind of want to mimic, but I think it's just the approach that I love.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's theatre, isn't it? He's the characters and the costumes and the look, everything about that it's theatre, and sort of almost the music is almost secondary, I think, when you experience it as a whole, as Bowie.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's something I always strive for, in that sense, to get anywhere a smidge of that, I think, because that's the best artists do have that, I think.
What's your favourite Bowie track?
Oh, I think I might have to controversially say it would be something off of Black Star.
Okay, yeah.
Because that was an album that I actually experienced when it came out. I kind of made it. I listened to what there and then, and I think that's a big thing. Whereas all of his older stuff was already released. There's a weird thing when you're listening to music when it actually sort of genuinely feels like new, because it is new. It's just been freshly released, and you kind of sync up with it. I don't know. You kind of feel like you got a bit of a closer bond to it.
Do you think his look was as important as his music?
Short answer, yes. It did so much especially for the era in which he was doing all this, you know. And it meant to see a man in particular to be dressing up in a more feminine way and a more, you know, exploring that identity, a more feminine look as well, which he went through. I think, yeah, it was so important. It made what you call you know, the odd people feel like they're the cool people kind of thing, you know. So I think I think with his work, I don't think you can really separate the two.
No, I think you're right, and especially during that time, as you say, when it was sort of like, you know, illegal to be gay, you know, and not that he necessarily was or wasn't, but the gender bending, he was a big trailblazer of that. And
yes.
What do you think the impact that he had on the LGBTQ plus community was, or still is?
I think it's massive. I don't think you can. I mean, like people like him, like I don't know if you could obviously put it into words, but I just think I've done so much. You know, it's given so much confidence to that community, and it's if it wasn't for those sort of figures, you can't. It's a hard one, really. You just don't know. If you took Bowie away and you took him out of this universe, and who knows what the landscape would look like now? But definitely, like people like himself have made such a big difference, you know.
Are there any contemporary artists that you can think of that have a sort of a similar cultural significance as Bowie?
Different ways, but like Cardi B with like WAP and everything. I think I've got really into this because of Annie, and I think like what she's doing is extremely important with reclaiming words and just like just giving power to female sexuality.
That's a great point, though, and I think that's similar with what Clitrip does. Is like femininity doesn't have to be tame or you know, like take a back seat, and it can be in your face and it can be tough, and then you know, it's reclaiming that sort of the sexuality of women. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, yeah, with that in particular, it's obviously got caused a lot of offence. You know, people just thinking it's vulgar for the sake of being vulgar, or at the moment, but it's funny, isn't it? As soon as it's flipped, as soon as it's like on the other foot, it's like, oh, hang on, no, it's too much.
You, when you play live, you sometimes dress in maybe not non-traditional sort of male clothes. You want to maybe talk about that, and is that sort of a Bowie influence on you, do you think?
I wouldn't say, again, not directly. I think, I could easily sort of lie now and just sort of pretend or whatever, but I don't think it's a direct thing. But again, if you didn't have someone like Bowie who'd made these sort of movements and these leaps forward, then who knows? Do you know what I mean? If I would have been in a position where that kind of domino effect, as it were, of sort of influence would have led to that. I've always kind of been keen to do, and always felt but lacked a bit of what's the word? I lacked the confidence to do that. But I found with some of the circles that I've been in with in Brighton, and especially like when I played with Libra for a bit, and like Guy Jones, I remember like with him, he would dress in feminine sort of clothing and stuff, and we'd just be like, that gave me a lot of confidence there, and that was a really cool thing. And also like Annie is always really supportive, and so I was like, yeah, I should do it. And for me, it's a nice. I like it because it adds to the theatre, adds to the performance. And it's something that I'm not so comfortable with, like dressing like day to day, but as a performance, it's a bit of escapism, and it's nice, and I like to do that. And I in some ways feel more powerful on stage doing that. That's the funny thing though. We're here talking about this now, and like what 2021, and I'm living in Brighton, all these things, and I'm sort of being like, I feel a little bit. I felt quite brave because I did that. And then you look at Bowie, what he was doing. That just shows you the caliber of the guy we're talking about. You know, it's just like you can't actually imagine like the courage it would take for him to do what he did when he did. You know.
Absolutely. What do you think his lasting legacy is or will be?
I think what he's done for the LGBTQ community, I think, as just with his aesthetic and everything, and I think it's a massive thing. But I just think, again, just purely and simply, just his. Only got to look at his the caliber of work that he's done, and the variety of the people he's collaborated with musically, and just the different, and just the fact that you could never ever tell after an album of what he's done where it's going to go next, kind of thing. So I just think just the depth of his work.
If you could ask David Bowie one question, what would it be?
I think I would like to ask him quite a big question, but I think I'd like to know where he gets his drive from, or where he got his drive from, what it was about, what pushed him to do what he does. And what's that thing that makes him, like we can all just, like we're talking now, we could all just stay in bed, and it's hard to do. I think a lot of us all want to be really creative, and we want to be prolific, and we all want to love the idea of producing loads of music, but I'll be like, what makes you do it? Because he did it. He didn't just have ideas and not go for it. He had these ideas and actually, smashed it and executed them all so well. So I'd like to tap into, I guess you could argue it's something that you kind of sometimes born with, but I'd like to kind of know what is it that makes him, because there must have been times in his head when he must have thought like, could have a week off. So I think that's it. Yeah, that would be my one. How do you stay driven, and how do you do that? Especially because he's had a bit of, sure, he's had a lot of ups and downs, like we all do. We all have to carry our sort of our burdens or whatever. We've all got a lot going on. So sometimes, how do you not let that affect your productivity?